Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon-free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. So today's episode is going to be a little bit of a spin in format. We are going to talk to Tanya Smith, and Tanya is a friend of mine who I met through this, mastermind membership called Brand Builders Group. I absolutely love Brand Builders. You guys heard from AJ Vaden a few weeks ago, who is the founder of Brand Builders Group. And I absolutely love this community. And I met Tanya in there, and she is a brand strategist. And I had asked this question in the Facebook group around, conveying the value of tax strategy, of accounting, like wondering why people don't get this type of help. Why, even listeners, even you, why don't you hire an accountant early on in your business? Why don't you hire someone to help you with taxes? What is the roadblock in getting the help that you need to financially protect yourself? And I wanted to hear from people who had waited. I wanted to hear from people who maybe had some resistance to that. And Tanya's response was so good. I wanted to talk to her on air with you and actually have this dialogue back and forth. We're going to candidly talk about the challenges with hiring an accountant, why people are waiting, and just kind of talk about how to articulate that message. We're even going to talk about how accountants can better brand themselves and better communicate with customers. And I'm going to let you in on why you probably feel this type of resistance, or why maybe this is a struggle for you, either in terms of perceived cost, what the values are. This was just a really interesting conversation with Tanya, and we're going to be following it up for sure with more conversations with her around her brand strategy. So let's dive into the conversation and find out why people aren't hiring accountants too soon. Hey, Tanya, welcome. I'm so happy to have you on.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad to be here.
So guys who are listening, Tanya is in a group with me, sort of I guess I would call it a mastermind. We're in like a membership group together called Brand Builders. And I posed this question in the Facebook group, and she was so kind to respond to it. And I was like, I really want to have this conversation. I want to talk with you more about this. And I want to have you guys listen in and be a fly on the wall in this conversation, because this is something that has been boggling my mind for years, and other accountants too, but also it's super valuable for anyone who has a business who maybe doesn't understand why your customer doesn't see the same value you do in what you do. And it can be frustrating, and it can be concerning, and it can also be discouraging. But at the same time, I think if you can get past it and unlock it, it's just gold. So I want to actually go through this exercise with Tanya today and just honestly, we're just going to have a conversation about this. The question I posed, Tanya, was something to the effect of, I don't have the exact words in front of me, but I posed it like, why don't people invest in help early on in their business for finances? And I want like the most blunt answer, like you're not going to offend anybody or me. Like, why aren't people investing in this? Or what is the perception of what it is we do, where people will hesitate to invest early on in their business? And I'll just let you kind of start with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I started out as a freelancer, graphic designer, just making like $12 an hour. It was like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And just didn't really know anything about having a business. I just found clients and they paid me, and I didn't even have a business license to start or a separate checking account. Like, finally, when I hired an accountant for our taxes, he was like, "Oh my gosh, you have to at least have a separate bank account," because it was a mess, right? Like trying to separate the finances, going through receipts, like. So thankfully, I finally figured that part out.
And when was that though? When was that? Like, how far along in your business?
2000. Oh, when I got the accountant.
Yeah.
I started in 2006. That was like 2000. maybe, so 3 years in.
3 years in. Okay.
Yeah. And at that point, still just making like $30,000 a year in revenue. So, even hiring an accountant for me was like, wow, this costs, this is an expense that I needed at the time, but it's still, hiring anyone felt a little daunting, at that stage in my business. So, and then just not even knowing, I didn't know there was someone who could help you strategize with your money, right? And also just not even knowing how to make more money at that stage of my business. Like I was just charging by the hour. So I've evolved that way. And wasn't until the last 2 years or so that I knew of people like you, that someone could advise you on your money. And I always just kind of assumed my CPA would be giving me the best advice, my tax preparer, but they aren't really serving a role as an advisor unless I'm hiring them for that separately, which I didn't really know about that. But then I think just that question of the amount of revenue coming in, like last time I looked on the Small Business Administration website, like a huge amount of small businesses don't make more than $50,000. Like it's a solo person, they're cleaning houses or doing graphic design or whatever. And so to me, that seems like that income threshold. You're like, what money do I have to manage, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm just paying myself this amount of money per month. But this last year, my accountant recommended I become an S corp because the last 3 years or so I've been in more of the 80 to $100,000 range. So I did that, and it was a major pain. I hired a lawyer to help me, and you have to file all these extra taxes and forms and set up the payroll and all of that stuff. And then at the end of the year, she did my taxes, and I actually paid more in taxes than saved. So I wish I had someone do kind of an analysis, because we didn't really do that. She just said I should do it because it would save me in the self-employment taxes. And so
your story is like literally everything. This is so funny because literally everything that you're saying is a culmination of like the top 10 things I've heard people say. It's like in order. It's like, well, I didn't know this person existed in my business. I didn't know how much they cost. I didn't know when I should hire them. I didn't feel like I made enough money to justify their cost.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I finally did hire them, I just did what they said, and I didn't ask questions. Right. Not that I would expect you to, but I did what they said as an advisor, and I don't understand why I did it. And I feel like I was no better for it. Like that was literally that's the progression I hear all the time. And like, you're completely not alone in that. I find that for everybody. And I wish I could solve that.
I don't know where, I mean, if I could go back in time in my business, like I didn't know the Small Business Administration existed. I didn't know there was a women's business center where you could get free help and, even just the resources on the website. Of course, that was way back in like 2005, 2006 when I started my business. Like, barely even Googled stuff back then, Like,
I know, right? We were like YouTube just came out or something.
So, and so if I could go back in time, I'm hoping with some of those resources, they would have been directing me into that direction. Like, you should meet with these people about your finances. So I don't know if that's something you've tapped into, helping people at that stage with those resources or not, but.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have an entire online course, right? That we call it Business Financial Quick Starter. And it's like everything you need to know in your first 6 months in business, or if you're more than 6 months in, it's just basically your foundational building blocks. That's like, at a minimum, you need to have this stuff in place to be taken seriously or to unlock next level stuff. Like, this is level 1 of the video game. Like, these are the things you have to get to level 2. And that's how we do it. But admittedly, a challenge for me is getting people to understand they need it, and people to understand, because the focus has been on, I just need to make money. Like, Shannon, I make, like, to your point, I make 30 grand a year. What the hell do I have to do with all this? Like, I don't need a separate checking account. And I'm like, but you do, but like you're not taking the business seriously because it's not bringing in a ton of money. So who am I to convince you to equip your business like you're taking it seriously? And that's like a constant kind of back and forth for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have learned that stuff through the years, like going to, NABO and other places where I've learned and thankfully have most of my ducks in a row, but it took me a long time. It would, things would have been much easier if I'd had, my separate accounts and my a bookkeeping software and all of this stuff.
Exactly.
So I'd love to hear more from you about, why do we need this and at what stage should we be meeting with you and who do we search for, right? Like I didn't know there's a difference.
We didn't know there were multiple flavors. Yeah. So, oh my God, there's so much to go through there. I have this sort of philosophy and this framework where there's the right help at the right level and you layer it. So like, there's never one professional fits all. Mm-hmm. So it's like a doctor. I equate it to a doctor. Like when you're a kid, you have a pediatrician, and then you get older and you go to the internal medicine doctor, and you might go to the chiropractor when you get older, and go for like colonoscopies, guys, and like, right. And you have like the gynecologist, the dermatologist. I feel like the older we get, the more doctors we have because we have more problems with unique things about our bodies versus the one-stop pediatrician. Yeah. Your business is the exact same. So it's like you can go to the one-stop place when you're a baby because there isn't a whole lot of variety in your problems.
Right.
Right. When you're 30 grand, you have 30 grand problems, which is like, I don't make enough money.
Yeah. Right. I need more clients.
Exactly. I need more clients. Help me get more clients. And usually the person who can help you with that is the coach or the consultant or the brand consultants or whatever it is, right? Like I need more money. I need people who will help me with that. And I say, okay, we need a way to make money. So there's specialists who work in that. I think an accountant is usually the one managing the money or helping you allocate the money and deal with the data around the money. So I say you want to hire someone to help you make money on one end, but at a minimum have a bookkeeper who can organize the money that comes into the right buckets, make sure your stuff is separated and keep it organized, because then the tax person's going to come around and say, hey, I need your books to do your taxes. Right. And most first year business owners especially just go like shrug their hands like that little emoji. And they're like, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. And then it's a painful process. And then there's like tears shed over bank statements late at night in April. And no one needs to go through that. I think that's like part of my mission is to make sure no one has to go through that. But I think that people will assume that pediatrician can grow with them and they don't.
Yeah, right.
You need a new specialist. You need someone who will uniquely help you solve your problem. But people are unaware of where they are in the game, like where they're actually, what they should be focusing on. And there are different specialties, much like doctors. I mean, doctors are a very respectable profession. I'm just using an analogy. Like we are not as smart as doctors, but we have our own specialties. Like maybe that's tax minimization or just tax preparation. There's nothing wrong with tax preparers, but all they do is publish it, right? They just do the paperwork. Maybe there's actually a CFO, which is what I do. Maybe there's bookkeepers who can help you collect the data. So it's really about what you need in your business. And there's always a stalemate, Tanya, between like, because I know what you're thinking. I don't know what I need. That's what I need to ask. You need to tell me. Right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and assuming too, I think that it's going to cost a lot of money.
Exactly.
I think like $1 million businesses need a CFO. Like, I'm not there.
You're not
yet,
wrong.
so.
That's about right. Right. High 6 to low 7 figures probably need an actual CFO type service for sure.
Yeah. So how do you find the one that's the pediatrician level accounting person for you? I guess on Facebook, people are like, I need an accountant.
Yeah.
And that's what people usually ask, so what should we be asking for when we're in this early 6 figures or below? Yes.
So you're a brand strategist, right? So it's literally the same science of this. It's like, what do I need? Well, I think the more specific you can be with what you're asking for, the more likely it is that person will find you. And that person, hopefully, if they're implementing good brand strategy, will be easy to find. The problem is that most accountants are really terrible at marketing. As a generalization.
Yeah, right.
So you could Google accountants in my area. You can find plenty of people. But I think what you'd have to do is say, I'm just going to say an example. I'm looking for a bookkeeper and a tax preparer who work well together, who specifically serve creative entrepreneurs. Or maybe it's, I'm looking for someone who's an expert in real estate investing, or I'm looking for someone who's an expert in this, who deals with this type of problem. Because I think when you can phrase it as, this is what I'm trying to find, and this is what the problem I'm trying to solve for, the likelihood of you finding a good match is higher.
Right.
If you can describe who you are, what you do, and why you think you need them. And it goes back to this whole like vicious cycle of, I don't know why I need them. I don't.
Right.
I just think someone told me I need an accountant, so I'm going to Google accountants. And what did they always say? Like, it's like diluted. It's this like diluted focus of looking for any accountant. I'm just looking for an accountant with a heartbeat. And I'm like, that's what you'll get. But it's definitely, it's a struggle for everybody, because accountants are also not great at labeling themselves anything else.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I found sometimes too not good with people. I guess, I don't know.
Absolutely, go for it.
I didn't go with one because I was like I can't understand him on the phone, and like it's like I don't know.
If it's not enjoyable, then like what do you?
Yeah,
especially if they're commanding a higher price. I'm like, well, at least I want to not be miserable in the meeting. Like, I want to look forward to the meeting if I'm going to be charging this or paying this much money.
Yeah, and I think that one too. Like, maybe this happens as we came on when he was starting his business, and then I think his target audience changed, and so we became like low priority. Like he was working with bigger corporations and stuff, and we could kind of fill that. So we found it.
And I think that like there's definitely an underserved community of entrepreneurs in their first couple of years who are, the sub 6-figure or like the low 6 figures that, there's not enough income to play with. I call it not enough clay to mold, where there's not enough stuff to play with in terms of tech strategies because there's not a ton of income to protect. So like, is it worth spending money to protect? Like, is it worth spending money on the safe if there's not much money in it? Right. So it's like, it's just not worth the squeeze. But then, and in that case, you're not going to get the elite level tech strategist, typically sub 6 figures, but you don't need that person. All you need is a really good tax preparer and a good bookkeeper at that point who can, and you can even be as specific as, I'm looking for someone who responds to emails quickly.
Right.
Like that, like forget the technical specialty. You could go down to that level and say, I'm really looking for someone who's engaging. You can even say you're looking for a woman or a man or whatever. Like, I'm looking for someone who's going to be understanding, who will teach me this stuff. And just understand that the more time you want to take of them, the more you're probably going to pay. But you also have to understand is it worthwhile to you to have that personal attention or to have that person build a relationship with you?
Yeah. I think from a branding standpoint, for an accountant, having that accountant that specializes in that type of business, because that's another thing. When I was interviewing some, I'm like, I just don't feel like you're a fit for me. Number one, the price, like they're not willing to have a smaller option. And so if anyone wanted to specialize in working with those types of businesses, I would definitely put it out there. Like, hey, we work with businesses that are, low to under $100,000 and just need these things. And maybe we grow with you, but we have a starting point or something. Yeah. So, cause I haven't seen that in my
I haven't either. We as a profession, as accountants, equally have a responsibility to articulate what problem we solve, as much as business owners need to kind of learn how to articulate the problem they need solved. Right. So like, no one's speaking the same language and it's so challenging because also accountants typically, we come from pretty high paying jobs in these big accounting firms, and we're like going off on our own going, okay, I need to charge X dollars, or I need to make X revenue in order to sustain my lifestyle, or I need to do this, or to really serve my mission, because it is expensive to run a practice. So we go, okay, I have to charge this much. That means I can't work with the, brand new baby business owners. I got to be solving problems up here. Yeah. And that's tricky too for us, because it's like, I have a passion for solving that problem, but it's not profitable.
Right.
And that becomes the challenge of like my business. Like, it's like, what is it? My heart's telling me yes, my business is telling me no. And it's so challenging, which is why we have these like lower tier offers. Like I have the courses, I have the community, I have this podcast, right? But it's interesting. So like, it's kind of flipping the script, because you are a brand strategist. So I'm taking advantage of that fact and saying, like, from a branding standpoint, I feel like accountants are missing an opportunity. I think they're not articulating enough how they can help people or what their responsibilities are or where they start and stop, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think that's true. Like even just understanding, like you said before, bookkeeper, tax preparer, accountant, CFO, what's the difference between those things? And, you know, because I kind of assumed an accountant does all those things, and maybe some do.
An accountant can. Accountant is like the word. Right. It's like the word doctor.
Yeah.
It's like they're all doctors, but they're specialties. So like an accountant is the most broad, just so you guys know, accountant is the most broad plain English term to describe anyone who works in an accounting or tax related profession, period. Like you can use accountant to describe anybody, but it's like strategist or something like that, where it's like, well, what do you do? Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, I mean, you're doing the right thing by just putting some education out there for people to know what to look for. So I think you're doing great. So
I appreciate that. I wish, well, for those of you listening, are going to understand this. I just wish more people would understand it. And going back to like accountants and how they are branding themselves too. I mean, in my opinion, they're also not helping this misunderstanding. I feel like, by the way, my profession, we're like people pleasers. So even if you're accountant, even if you're, let's just say like you're a tax preparer, right? You go to them and say, I want tax planning. And they don't actually do that. They're just churning out tax returns all day. And there's nothing wrong with that, H&R Block. Go ahead, keep going. But like, that's your business model. That's fine. You can churn out the same stuff over and over again. But if the customer wants tax planning, a lot of CPA firms, a lot of accountants, especially practitioners, they're boutique, will go, okay, yeah, we can do that. And they'll find a way to do it for you, even though they've never done it or they don't, not that they couldn't, but they're not really, they're deviating from their core menu to do that for you.
Yeah. I used to do that a lot as a brand designer. Be like, oh yeah, I'll design all the things for you. And I've dialed it down myself for sure. Like, you know, I create your branding. And then if you want like a bunch of social media posts or brochures, like you take that to someone else and do that part for you. So I think it's wise to do that in whatever profession you're in, because it's going to make you more valuable and easier to brand and market. So yeah, I guess we just need more education around which kind of accounting professional you need in what so
or the like where they start and stop, right? Because people think that one accountant should do everything. And like, for example, I don't do payroll.
Right.
Like I just don't do payroll. I won't move money for a customer. Like I won't take their checkbook and like write checks for them. I won't take custody of their money and make payments. I go, that's too risky for me. I'm not going to take your checkbook from you. I own the record book. I could embezzle money if you let me have access to both of those things. Not that I ever would, but I don't want you to be in that position where you're exposing yourself to that type of risk. And I want to train people to expect that that's not something that they should be doing. So there's a lot of stuff there to like educate people on this is what your accountant should be doing in theory, but it's super confusing because all of us offer different things on the menu. And when you don't understand what's on the menu, you don't know what's included or not. And it's super confusing. That's another thing I've always seen.
Right. Yeah. So I haven't taken your online course, but do you cover, like, what do you cover in it? I guess I'm curious to know.
Yeah. So I have several courses. One of them is that quick starter. And that is like, congrats, you just started a business. And I always made a joke that, you know, you don't get a brochure that's like on your way out of the LLC. Like you get the LLC, you don't get like an email that's like, here's what's next. like here's what you need to be doing now. And there's just no IKEA instructions, no brochure, no nothing. And I go, this is literally the IKEA instructions that you should have got with your Secretary of State certificate, like the little LLC. Like this should have immediately followed, which is go open your, like go get your EIN, go open your bank account, go set up a payment system, which you may already have but hook it up to your business stuff now. And here's how to do basic bookkeeping. Here's your monthly bookkeeping checklist. You or someone else need to go do these things. Like if you don't want to invest in the bookkeeper, then invest the time in learning. Those are your two options. But this is what has to get done every month. And then here's what this means for your taxes. Here's what to expect around your taxes. Here is what makes something deductible, how deductions matter for you now, why being taxed as a business owner is different than an employee, and what to look out for to avoid a huge tax bill. So it's kind of this like, it literally is like the pamphlet of what you should have learned, that we should have got taught in school, by the way.
Yeah, I learned all that stuff over years of mistakes.
Yeah.
And, so I think that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's in an hour and a half. So,
wow. Awesome.
Yeah. So, by the way, this is not an infomercial for BFQ, but it is. I have to disclaim that, like, that was not the plan, but the whole idea was, it was literally for this exact use case, because I heard people saying, God, I wish I knew this sooner. And the irony is, I'm like, well, then buy the course. Like, it's this is the thing. But then also I get the resistance too of, well, I don't need that yet. And I'm like, but you do. And like, you don't know you need it until far later than you realize it.
Yeah. And then you're trying to solve some problems that are caused, like the not having the separate bank account and like digging through receipts and like, all of that was solved by just like having one credit card. Buy everything with that card and stuff.
I wish I could do like a Christmas Carol, Ghost of Christmas Present, Ghost of Business Future, and be like, this is you crying over bank statements. Just go buy the course. Just go buy. It's $199. Just go buy the course and avoid this whole thing. Like, this is what your life will turn into. Business owners are a unique breed, and I'm one of them, where it's like, we just want to go make money. Like, why are we worried about this? We don't make any money yet. We have nothing to manage. There's no perceivable problem until there's a problem. Like, I don't need to go on a diet until my jeans don't fit.
And you don't know what you don't know until you run into the problem, and then you learn it. And I think, at least for me, like, that's part of the appeal of being a business owner. It's just like trying the new thing and learning from it and keep going. But I think it can get us into trouble sometimes. And the more I've gotten into my business, the more I am willing to just pay someone to tell me. I love coaches. I always have coaches, and I'm in masterminds, and I like to learn. I guess maybe because I have a little more money now, like I don't have to stumble my way through anymore. I can get some help. So I'm definitely into that.
Yeah, I agree. You go from investing, your time into investing your money to gain back your time. Yeah.
It's true.
What do you think we can do? Like, I say we, just broadly, us accountants, tax strategists, whatever, like, what can we do better in order to get the message across, or to attract these early stage business owners, to enroll them into the idea that it's a good idea to set up some of these fundamental things?
Yeah. Well, I think investing in some help with your branding and messaging, for sure, and deciding, what do I want to specialize in and put myself out as, right? Because then it's going to be super clear who you help and what you offer. Then you're not wasting your time or other people's time, or modifying what you're doing to please them. So it's taking some time to work with a strategist and really dial in your visual and the messaging, like copywriting and whatever else you're putting out there, and having a marketing plan, right? Like, you're doing your podcasting, you have your courses, and you have a good website. You're doing all the right things. So maybe they should just follow you.
I appreciate that, especially the good website part, because I'm like, that's something we spent a lot of time to work on.
A lot of accountants don't even have a website, for one. Or it's pretty awful.
They're awful. They're all the same template too. I'm like, let me guess. It's brown with like cream font, and it's got a little like the little legal symbol on the like they're all the same, and they're so boring. About us is usually first.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So, maybe that feels uncomfortable and like a stretch for you to invest your money in branding, because it is kind of abstract and maybe a little unquantifiable. People are like, what's my return on investment going to be for that? It's a long-term strategy, investing in your branding. So I would definitely recommend that.
I would agree. And that's not biased whatsoever. Right. But I know, but the thing is, I can attest to this, because when you invest in your branding, you're projecting an image, and it's not fake, but
Mhm.
you're showcasing the pieces of you that you want to showcase to attract the people you want to attract.
Mhm.
And everyone is better for it because you find people who love working with you, you find people you love working with,
Mhm.
and they have a better understanding of what you do, who you are, who you serve. They can also find other referrals for you because your branding is so strong.
Yep.
And you're setting the tone of your expectations through that as well, saying like, look, this is what I charge, this is what I do, this is why you need this type of service,
Yep.
this is who I'm talking to. And you're going to be more likely to capture the people that are in their journey where you want to meet them.
Yep.
That's so important, and a key reason why I think branding is so important and why I've invested in it over the years. But it's something that's definitely underappreciated in our profession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And speaking of referrals, it's so much easier for people to refer you when they clearly know who your target audience is and what you specialize in. That's how I get most of my business, and it's super clear what I do and who I work with. And even if people haven't worked with me before, they know on social media, and they're always recommending me. And I think that's huge. And that for accountants, especially if you're working with local people, referrals are going to be huge for you too. So getting that getting it out there, who you are and what you specialize in, is going to help with that. For sure.
Yeah. And I think that, the more we can just get the message out there of like what we do, how we add value, the better. So Tanya, the other thing I wanted to ask about was around this idea of like tax strategists and CFOs and what they do, how they add value. And like when you need them in your business, yes, it's a little bit later when you have more money to work with. But I know that there are a lot of people who, I don't know, like what are some of the, I'd say misconceptions, but I don't assume you know what misconceptions would be. It's more like, what's your perception? What is like your unique perception from your side on, do they feel untouchable in terms of like price point and engagement? Like where do you see these people in your business? Like where would you see these people go? Like, oh, that's out of reach for me. Or I think all I need is this person right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, as I have been making more money, I definitely am like, I want to pay the little amount of taxes as possible. So that's where I see like, okay, I got to ask somebody because I don't know the rules on this. So that's where I see the value in, a tax preparer. But there is a blurry line on like, how much can I ask you? Like, are you going to bill me by the hour? Is this included in my package? Like,
that's a good question. Yeah.
Not really clearly. It hasn't, it's like, it costs this much to prepare your taxes, and I'm like, okay, so is that, I just give you my stuff and you submit it and sign it, or do I get to ask you some questions about, how should I be allocating this money? What, can I do to maximize the money that I get to keep? So I guess that's in my experience, like you were saying, where does it start and stop? And being more clear on that, and then maybe recommending, if you need more help, here's additionally what I could do for you, or you need to go to someone else. And then, the cost for me, just kind of like, I'm ignorant about it. I don't know how much it costs, really, to get advice and ongoing planning with your taxes beyond my tax preparer. I haven't really.
I'm going to say I don't know either because everyone's so all over the place. Like you don't know what the thing is that everyone is, especially if they're like solo practitioners or boutique firms, right? You're going to have, it's going to run the whole spectrum, and it's going to be all over the place, but it's also going to be a wide variety of things included. So my best analogy is like, how much does a burger cost?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, it depends.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want on it? How fast do you want it? Yeah. Like what?
Where's it from?
Where's it from? Right? Like, is it some like grass fed, whatever? Is it the Impossible Burger? Yeah. Right? Like, is it a Big Mac? Like, what do you mean? And the problem is that the accountants will be like, well, they didn't order the giant thing with all the toppings, and I'm like, they didn't know you had it, what your options were. Like, you didn't give them a menu, and they didn't know what you were going to give them.
Yeah.
It's a huge problem.
That's my experience. Exactly my experience. So,
my advice to accountants would be put what's included on your services in your engagement letter. Also put what's not included, but recommended. Like,
Right.
we don't do this, but we recommend supplementing our services with the following. Like, do you know how valuable that would be if someone did that?
Yeah. Well, not to mention an upsell in what you're, selling
Totally.
for yourself.
Yeah, or a chance to partner and say, we don't
Right.
offer this, but our partner over here does. And then maybe you get a referral fee or whatever, you get a commission for it. But you don't have to be everything to everyone, but you can also, but you have to be super clear about where you start and stop. And I think that the perceived value of what we do is a function of the confusion of all this stuff, but also what seems arbitrary pricing. And it's like, is it based on time? Like, what is this based on? What is this actually based on? I wish I could tell you a straight answer to that. It's based on what we feel our time and energy is worth. And this is going to sound so funny. I just talked about this with another person. It is a function of how much of a pain in the butt we think you are.
Yeah, that's funny. Well,
It really
my industry is the same. I mean, maybe not on that, but the value you're like how much for you, how much more money are you going to make or save based on your services, right? For me, how is this branding package going to affect your business for the next like 20 years? Like, it can be huge. So I'm not charging you $100 an hour. I'm charging you based on the value that you're going to get from this.
Exactly.
So I guess just portraying that value is where the challenge comes in for an accountant, especially.
Yeah, because a lot of us see our deliverables as like tax returns and financial statements, and like, I'm going to do your taxes, and it's a flat fee, and that's fine. That's transactional. That's just, I give you money, you give me tax return, and you don't have to have a huge relationship with that person. But when you get into like tax savings, tax planning, you actually want to like sit down on the proverbial therapist couch and be like, okay, so here's what I'm thinking of doing this year. I got to talk to you about this. Like, and you need to give them all the facts, have conversations, have like ideation, brainstorming sessions. It becomes like what you do. Because now it's like a tax strategist and a brand strategist are not that different. It's just, how do we creatively leverage what I know to help you accomplish your goals and to get where you need to faster? And it's the exact same experience, but a lot of people think that their tax preparer is doing this for them. And yes, your tax preparer may look over your return and like note a couple things that seem a little bit weird, but at the end of the day, what you're paying them to do is enter the numbers in the software, spit out a tax return, and give it to you. So it's a lot of misconception on that.
Small business mind, or my husband especially, is like, I can just do that. Like, I can just type it into the thing, like, why are we paying someone $1,500 to do this for us? That's another just hurdle you need to answer for that level of client. So, but I see the strategist as being the next step for me, as I'm actually have a way to scale now with the Brand Your Biz kit that I'm making and online courses. Because as just a solo service provider, I mean, the only thing I can do is keep raising my prices. I can't take on more clients really than my load. So, but yeah, I see that as the next step for me in needing an accountant as I grow.
There's more advanced strategies for sure that you could take advantage of there. I mean, the S Corp that you mentioned can be a viable strategy at a certain point in profitability. I was also thinking about like your tax preparer could be a strategist too. Like they can do tax planning with you. They're smart enough to, they're equipped to do it. But I think accountants want you to ask for it,
right?
Which is really counterintuitive, guys. But it's true. Like they're also not very good at sales. I'm generalizing, by the way, like vastly generalizing that they're not people and they're not good at sales, but like most of them are not. Right. So they're very timidly not good. They're going to be like, do you want to meet with me in November and go through anything? It's like, no, not really. But if they, right. But if they positioned it like, hey, I would love to do some planning to see how we can get your tax bill down before it gets too late to change anything. That's like a hell yes, no brainer, especially if that's included with your service.
Right.
So it's really about understanding what are the ways I can plan, like how much tax planning do you offer? How often can I speak with you? What types of questions can I ask you? You have to have those conversations.
Yeah. And my current accountant, I just got a new one this year. She's a personal friend. So hopefully I'm not taking advantage of that. But I do pop some questions, you know, like, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. Is this legal, number one? Or, you know, what's the best way to structure this for my taxes? And she's really good at responding. So, but we haven't had a really clear, like, you know,
relationship agreement.
Yeah, like, I mean, you know, she did send me the letter of engagement with, you know, I'm going to prepare your taxes and that kind of stuff. And I have asked her, you know, I'm like, is it okay if I ask you this question? But yeah, I definitely think having more defined packages like that is a good idea.
Yeah, my engagement letter is, it has all the legal jargon and all the stuff in it, but it also has like the first couple pages are basically expectations and scope. So it's like, we will do this, we will not do this. We recommend these people to go do these things, or we recommend that you find someone to cover these blind spots that are left behind by our service.
Right.
Most people don't care that we don't do them, but they would only be mad if I didn't tell them they still needed it. That's the big thing. Yeah. And then the other part of it is expectation setting of, we will respond to your email within 48 hours. Like, chill. We'll respond to you. Our expectations are as follows. So that you're not wondering where the hell your return is or what the status is of your stuff. I hate to leave people in a panic wondering what's going on. I'm going, no, go back and read the letter. It says like, during tax season, you'll get periodic updates. I'm going to try my best to get in touch with you. That's one thing we can all do better, but it's something that I think that more people should come to expect and be adamant that they get some type of communication ongoing in order to, you know, to work with an accountant.
Yeah.
Cool. Tanya, I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of unpack this and chat through it. Cause I've gotten a lot out of this conversation in the form of understanding like where people are at when they're going through this, but it's also, it's reaffirming a lot of the assumptions I had because you guys know this, I grew up an accountant. I was learning this stuff since I was 12. And for me, I'm so out of the loop on how people feel about this stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's so common sense to me that I'm like, help me understand. It's almost like a language. If I didn't speak English, I'm like, teach me English because I don't understand this. I've been speaking this my whole life.
Right.
And it's super helpful.
Yeah. Well, and for me, and I'm sure like every small business owner, we don't talk about accounting.
I know, that's the other thing. Like, I never hear about it.
Thing where I'm just like, oh my gosh, we have to do the taxes. And we have to, you know, it's just kind of something that I don't want to think about it. It stresses me out. And you know, so that's another disconnect for the small business owner, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like we're constantly going to have this struggle of disconnect. But if you take anything else away from this episode, I hope that it's how to better talk to your accountant or how to better identify the person you want to be working with and how to have that conversation with them to start a real relationship with them as opposed to the transactional quid pro quo of just getting a return done. Because I think we all, as business owners, we all deserve better advice than just that. It's just a question of who is the right person to have in your corner right now. And I'll be coming out with soon, guys. I'll be coming out with something, a tool of some kind. I've been ideating on this for a while of like, I need to make something that teaches you this, that teaches you the right person you need at the right time and how you know when you've beat the boss of the video game level and you need to level up. Like, how do you know you've outgrown your current CPA or your accountant or whatever, right? Like how to know who you need when and what triggers that evolution. So once I figure out that mystery, I will find a way to articulate that to you guys. I hope that will be helpful. Absolutely. Tanya, thank you so much for hopping on the show today.
Yep. It was a great chat.
Do you want to explore more about the topics discussed in today's episode? Or maybe you have specific questions on how to apply what you learned? If so, check out the Keep What You Earn community. Join other listeners, entrepreneurs, and experts, and get the support you need to get out of overwhelm and into action. Click on the link in the show notes to join now for free and start maximizing the value you get from each and every episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.